It is no surprise that if you're watching this video, you already know that the system is not serving you. In fact, it probably stopped serving you a long time ago. But what if I told you your higher guides know there's a big shift coming and they've been preparing all of us for it? And what about you who have never connected with your higher guides? Well, this video, by the end of it, you'll know why it is so important to start making these connections now before it's too late. You see, we're in the midst of a splitting timeline right now. Everybody's being faced with two choices. This has been going on since the Great Awakening, the initiation that happened in 2019. And now people all over the world are realizing these systems that have served us up until now are no longer going to be serving us because they're built on a shaky foundation. This foundation, is the foundation my grandparents were building it on, that my dad built it on. My mom, when they came here, bought a house, started a family, had abundance. How many of you watching this video feel like you have abundance in your life right now? Abundance of healthy relationships, abundance of money. Hardly any people I know outside of my traditional circles are, tapped in per se. By the end of this video, you'll have an excellent idea of what you need to know. In fact, connecting to your higher guides, more importantly, and the awakening that's happening on the planet right now. And the big shift, the test that is coming for all of us. The systems that the society was built on were built on a shaky foundation. The system of the worldwide banking system, the cartels behind those systems, the big pharmaceutical industries, the petroleum industries, massive monopolies that were started hundreds of years ago, beyond our even, our human knowledge, just conscious knowledge. The past generations before us have been sort of unconsciously treading as a collective through this system because it did serve us. Let's be honest. The system served most people. My parents' generation, as long as you were a hard worker, you got what you needed. And how many of you millennials or even late millennials like me feel that way? I don't feel that way. But I've been communicating with my higher guides lately, and something I do every day. It's a practice to connect with my higher guides, to connect with my deep intuition. For me personally, it's an inner voice and an inner feeling. That is how I communicate. And I've had this impending feeling of doom, but not so much for my sake, but for the collective of humanity, the sleepy side of humanity, the people that haven't woken up yet. And you probably already realize that, if you're embodying this energy, the system's not serving you. Maybe you're working a job, a 9 to 5 job, and you already hate it. You've hated it for years. You've hated your boss. It's not serving you anymore. Deep down, there's something here. There's a reason why you're here. Many people around me are asking these questions. Like, I have friends and family that aren't even into spirituality or elevating their consciousness that are now becoming interested in this topic. So, what is this shift that's coming? What have my higher guides communicated with me about the shift? And what do you need to know? Well, first of all, this shift is going to be a test. It's going to be another system test, a shaking out of the system, something like what you saw in 2019, where there's going to be a splitting that happens between one mindset and the other mindset. These are sort of thought forms that people have unconsciously been programmed to. And the ones who are spiritually awakened have reprogrammed themselves with new thought forms or new thoughtware, ways of thinking. Some of these things were channeled through me from my higher guides, messages that are contained in these ancient texts, which leads me to believe that this is part of our collective unconscious. We all share collective thoughts. If we as a society are collectively living in fear, then collectively as a society we will keep experiencing events that embody that fear. It's the mirror principle, but on a collective large scale level. And as the frequency of the planet even changes, you're going to start to see some really interesting things happen with this collective unconscious. There's going to be a splitting of the collective unconscious into the degenerative timeline and the regenerative timeline. That's why you're seeing such a explosion in AI, VR crazy goggle sets. Like, I put one on like a week ago. A friend of mine got the new Apple Vision Pro, and I put that on, and I was like, wow, like it's so realistic, you guys. Your body actually has visceral reactions to like movements and speed and things like that. So virtual reality is becoming so real now that you actually can't tell the difference between a real experience and a virtual experience. This is another layer to the simulation, which the 3D reality that you live in is already a simulation. It's a projection of the 4D mind. Your mind actually doesn't live up in here where you might think it is. It is a projection that comes from the fourth dimension. The mind is actually part of a shared consciousness, if you will. And that is where the regenerative timeline comes in, because people who are connecting with this regenerative timeline are able to connect with higher guides that are even beyond the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension and beyond that, are starting to understand the nature of the mind, their connections, the roots of what makes them operate. And when this shift happens, when this shaking out happens, I want to say it's going to be quite abrupt. It's going to catch people off guard who have not been spiritually preparing for this, who have not started to make these connections. Your higher guide can serve as an inner compass. It is the way the higher guides operate. They operate through the right side of the brain, making a connection through the heart, which has its own bundle of nerves. It's actually the only muscle outside of your brain that has neurons embedded in it. And making this heart mind connection is the channel through which higher guides can communicate with you. And they're always there. Your higher guides have always been there. It's like a telephone wire. They're waiting for the next strong signal. And now is the most important time than ever to be making these connections with these higher guides so you can guide your way where you're stuck at right now, especially if you're in your 9 to 5. If you're a 9 to 5er, you're a traditional worker, then you're in for a rude awakening, because the 3D degenerative timeline is actually going to move more towards a type of feudalistic society. If you know what feudalism is, it is the landlords, the landowners, which it's a very small percentage of the population, and the vast majority of the population, which is serfs. You can already start to see this, right? Look at the World Economic Forum. Their motto is literally, you will own nothing and you will be happy. These are the designers of the degenerative timeline. So if you're working a 9 to 5, a job that you're not really happy with, which I know now, the vast majority of people working their 9 to 5 jobs, 3D jobs, I call them, are not happy. They have a deeper inner purpose. I mean, higher guides are able to make these connections. And some people naturally, without trying, have these intuitive connections that something isn't right. In 2019, before my spiritual awakening, I was a paramedic and I was going through some trauma. I'd actually been diagnosed with PTSD. I had a deep inner knowing that there was something bigger in store for me, that I was here to be part of the awakening, to be a agent, if you will, as part of this awakening, helping other souls cross over into their purpose, cross over into the regenerative timeline, which is going to be a timeline of abundance of love, a timeline of non duality, a timeline of oneness. It is something that ancient texts have predicted for a very long time. Even biblical texts and religious texts have collectively had a sort of story that this time is upon us. And so I think there's going to be a rude awakening for the sleepy. If you're part of the sleepy, then you might want to start looking at things that might open your heart up. My heart was pretty closed off before. And ever since I went through this spiritual awakening and started to become more in tune with my intuition, that mind body connection, and the higher guides, I've been able to embrace this path, live this path and be this path. So if you know deep down the system is not serving you, it is time to start taking the steps and start looking around at what you can do in terms of actionable, everyday lifestyle things, whether it's getting more fit, meditating. The mind and the body are one. So if you can start to work on your body, in turn you will start to affect the mind. You'll start to open the mind to different things. That's why I like doing cold showers in the morning. It's these little habits that can start to create that shift. The system wants to keep you in fear. They want to keep you asleep. They want to keep you in lower vibrational states. And if you stay down there, you're going to be part of this degenerative timeline. And as time goes on, time is an illusion, but as it goes on, these two worlds are going to exist side by side on the physical planet Earth. But the timelines are going to diverge eventually, and one party is not even going to be aware of the other party's existence. This is where I say, AI and VR is creating a sort of mesh grid simulation within a simulation. And maybe one day you're going to be living in like an AI metaverse reality, and there's going to be another layer of simulation in there. It's going to be just simulations all the way down. I know Elon Musk has even mentioned it on podcasts that he does believe we're living in a simulation because of the fact that we're able to create a simulation on our own. So the third one there is tap in. Tap into your intuitive abilities. I love making content around your intuitive connections and your connections to your higher guide, because that can be your compass. That can be that inner compass, that inner consultant that knows you better than anybody else, that has an outside perspective on your reality and is able to guide you and maneuver you through these very challenging, turbulent times. So this is a message from my higher guides. Some turbulent times ahead. It's time to tap in if you're not already. The sleepy are in for a big awakening, a rude awakening, a one last kind of shaking for them to escape that degenerative timeline before these things really start to split and come apart between the 3D and the 5D reality of oneness, of love, of non-duality. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, friends, peace.